Hello everyone, I'm Kenshin. Welcome to Talking History. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you. Today's historical discussion is about the capital of the Golden Age of Pirates, Port Royal. I believe many of you have seen the Pirates of the Caribbean series starring Johnny Depp. The lawless and pirate-infested harbor frequently depicted in the movies actually existed in history. It was located in what is now Jamaica, known as Royal Port or Port Royal at the time. It was once the legal base for pirates, ranked as the fifth among the world's top 10 treasures. However, it can no longer be found on the Earth's surface today, disappearing into the sea due to a natural disaster. Today, I will talk about this infamous city, Port Royal. When the Spanish arrived in Jamaica in the 1500s, they found it to be an excellent place for cleaning and refitting ships. However, at that time, only a few wooden warehouses were built. Fast forward to 1655, when the British seized Jamaica from the Spanish, officially occupying the island. Recognizing the strategic importance of the island in defending against Spanish threats and preventing French invasion, the British began fortifying the area. Within 2 years, they completed the construction of Cromwell's castle, later renamed Charles Fort. Construction continued for the next 20 years until 6 well-equipped fortresses were established. As a result, Port Royal had better defenses during its prosperous period than any contemporary Spanish city, such as Cartagena, Havana, Veracruz, or Porto Bello. Benefiting from the defensive works, the town developed rapidly. Its protected location, flat terrain, and proximity to deep water near the coast allowed large ships to easily perform maintenance and unloading. Sailors and merchants benefited from trade and opportunities. Between 1655 and 1692, Port Royal developed faster than any other town established by the British in the New World. In 1662, Port Royal had only 740 residents, but by the peak in 1692, the population was estimated between 6,500 to 10,000 people. The city covered only 51 acres, densely packed with about 2,000 buildings, and an estimated population of 6,500 to 7,000 people, including approximately 2,500 slaves. The subsequent development made Port Royal a center for the slave trade, as well as the export of sugar and raw materials, turning it into the commercial hub of the Caribbean and the most important economic port in the Americas. The city had merchants, craftsmen, traders, captains, slaves, and infamous pirates, most of whom participated in extensive business networks. The city boasted a governor's house, a king's house, a grand judge's court, 4 churches, and a cathedral. Surprisingly, many buildings were made of brick, indicating significant wealth accumulation compared to other settlements of the same period. Unlike other British colonies, Jamaica used coins as currency rather than bartering goods, demonstrating more advanced financial development. In the early development of Port Royal, privateering activities with official approval were common. Privateers or pirates received formal contracts from the British, allowing them to attack ships from Spain, the Netherlands, and France in the Caribbean. A portion of the loot was reserved for the king, and the rest flowed into the coffers of Port Royal citizens. Although this practice officially ended after the 1670 Treaty of Madrid, privateering and pirate activities continued until the 18th century. According to records, as early as 1689, nearly half of Port Royal's population was involved in these illegal activities. During its heyday, Port Royal was a vibrant city center, with expensive goods flowing through the port daily. Captain John Taylor, in his 1688 records, described Port Royal as an awe-inspiring city, well-built, fortified, inhabited by brave residents. He estimated about 600 brick houses and an equal number of wooden houses. According to him, the buildings were mainly 4 stories high, with basements, tiled roofs, sliding windows, and attached large shops and storerooms. Francis Hanson, in his 1682 work, detailed the wealth of Port Royal citizens. Port Royal may be called the warehouse or treasury of the West Indies, always like a continual art or show, every day importing all sorts of choice commodities, not only for the supply of the island, but so vastly great then again transported to the Spaniards, Indians, and other nations, in exchange whereof we read of ingots and cakes of gold, silver wedges and bars, pigs of lead, and fine pewter, with a profusion of wrought plates, jewels, rich pearl necklaces, and unsorted or undrilled pearls, almost every house having a cupboard full of plates, which they carelessly expose, their doors being almost never shut, nor are they afraid of thieves coming in to steal. Because in Port Royal there is more circulating cash than in London. Information about the clothing, food, and entertainment habits of Port Royal comes from literature and archaeological evidence. The residents' attire followed London's fashion trends closely. In 1687, John Taylor wrote that the lives of Port Royal merchants reached a brilliant peak, luxurious and prosperous, with splendid clothing. As per the fashion of King Charles II's reign, men wore Turkish clothing and fashionable jewelry, while merchants' wives wore pointed skirts and large lace collars. Records show that various materials were sold in the town, including plain silk, flower silk, Persian silk, plain and colored printed fabrics, exquisite women's stockings, ribbons, and cotton gloves. However, slave clothing was not as elaborate. White indentured servants' shirts could cost 4 shillings, a jacket 1 shilling and sixpence, possibly with cheap long stockings, shoes, and scarves. Slaves wore rough and cheap clothes made of brown, inexpensive German linen. Female slaves might wear discarded clothes from their mistresses. Port Royal was home to soldiers, sailors, slaves, pirates, and prostitutes, making it infamous for its debauchery and entertainment. Going to church was both a social pastime and a spiritual activity. Other forms of entertainment included playing dominoes or strolling along palisadoes in the evenings. In town, people frequently visited numerous inns and taverns. Some venues hosted cockfighting or bull-bear baiting, and some had billiard rooms. The 1680 census even mentioned a brothel owned by John Stan, including 21 white women and 2 black women. The decline of the city, and perhaps an indicator of its wickedness, can be linked to the infamous pirate Henry Morgan becoming deputy governor in 1675. Ironically, as Morgan represented the decline of the privateering era, he began cracking down on pirate activities. He died in 1688 and was buried in Palisadoes Cemetery, but 4 years later, a devastating event occurred, an earthquake. On June 7, 1692, a massive earthquake, estimated at 7.5 magnitude, struck the island in the early morning. At 11:40 a.m., a milder earthquake hit Port Royal, followed by violent shaking. Due to the city being mainly built on sand, it quickly faced the threat of soil liquefaction, causing buildings, roads, and residents to be sucked into the ground. Geysers erupted from underground, leading to collapsing buildings, and finally, a tsunami struck the city, dragging whatever hadn't been destroyed into the sea. In the end, about 33 acres of the city disappeared underwater, with 4 out of the 5 fortresses destroyed or submerged. It is estimated that around 2,000 people lost their lives, and even the gravesite of Captain Morgan slid into the sea, with bodies floating alongside those who had just died. Before the ground stopped shaking, locals reported that looting had already begun, with one writing, "Once the earthquake stops, your heart will hate to hear about the instant looting, plundering, and violence happening to people. Occupied by the most despicable of the vile, no one can claim anything as their own because the strongest, most wicked ones take whatever they want." As news of the destruction of Port Royal spread, it was widely considered a cautionary tale and a clear indication of divine retribution for the wickedness of pirates and sex workers, the vanity and wealth of the town's aristocracy, or the city's sins. However, the earthquake did not end the city's wicked behavior, nor did it end its relationship with sin and piracy. Pirates continued to stay and plunder Spanish ships for the next 50 years. In fact, in 1720, John Calico Jack Rackham was hanged on the gallows in Port Royal under the orders of pirate hunter and former privateer Woodies Rogers. Since then, the city has suffered attacks from fires, earthquakes, and hurricanes multiple times, leading the British to eventually decide to close the Port Royal naval base and shut down commercial activities. Most residents also decided to leave. In 1951, only a part of Port Royal survived an attack from Hurricane Charlie, leaving behind some original buildings. Today, most of the city's ruins lie underwater at a depth of 40 feet. Until the 1900s, visitors claimed that the city was still visible beneath the waves, giving an eerie feeling of floating above the rooftops. Since the 1950s, divers have been exploring and documenting the submerged city. Edwin Link conducted early excavations in 1956 and 1959, discovering two small areas near King's Warehouse and James Fort. In 1960, Norman Scott excavated around Carlisle Fort. In 1966 and 1968, Robert Mam excavated the remains of the Fish Market, two small taverns, and three ships located at the western edge of the city. In the 1970s, Anthony Priddy excavated a low-level housing area, discovering thousands of artifacts and architectural features. In 1969, Edwin Link discovered the most famous artifact, a pocket watch from 1686, stopped at 1143. In 1996, the Jamaican National Heritage Trust, JNHT, designated Port Royal as a protected national heritage site, signifying its significant importance to the identity and heritage of the Jamaican people. Any development activities in the town must consider its historical significance and respect the authentic architecture, culture, and spirit of the town. Port Royal is the only truly submerged city in the Western Hemisphere, with rich archives and documentary materials that are credible and authentic in all aspects. Reliable records can be found from the 17th to the 19th century, including diaries, store and warehouse inventories, itemized lists of merchants, captain's logs, and will certification lists, providing detailed descriptions of the nature and historical background of Port Royal's cultural heritage. Many artifacts discovered in the submerged city perfectly reflect its authenticity, such as stoves with cast iron frying pans still in place, piles of tin plates fallen from storage rooms, and the remains of children found in the ruins of their homes. Additionally, wreckage containing that day's garbage, including a man's beard and hair in the yard, was discovered. Many ceramics were found either intact or shattered at the drop location.